Hello, my friend, and welcome. This is the Back to Me podcast, and I am Heather, and I am super excited that you are here. And I just want to let you know that you're going to hear some tips and some tricks, some ideas, all to help you live your happiest and healthiest life. It is called Back to Me because when you are taking care of yourself, then you can take better care of others. And my goal is to make the world a better place. This is Wellness Your Way. I am really happy that you're here. Your true self is waiting. So it is time to step up and thrive. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the Back to Me podcast. Cheering. I do have little cheering things. Someday I'll have to just bust it on. Right? And we are talking to Michelle Hawk today, and I'm pretty excited to talk to you. I couldn't fit all of your titles into the line below your name there.
I have a lot. That's okay.
I had to leave out Alchemist. I'm like, darn it. Mm-hmm. But I'm super interested. And if I'm interested, well, everybody should be interested.
Gosh, I hope so. Yeah.
Right. And all of this stuff that you do. And it's funny because I usually start with people saying, how did you get into this? But you started so early in life. Like, I'm going to still ask it. How did you know that this was your path so early? I didn't know at the age of 15 what I was going to do.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's and it's funny that Alchemist is the one that got left off because I know that's mainly what we're talking about today, but that's okay. I didn't know at a young age. I was just following what I was interested in. So I began my journey as a magical kiddo, as I do believe all kiddos are. And I believe children are naturally animists in their consciousness. And animism, for those of you tuning in case you're not familiar with that term, animism is the belief that all things are alive, not only the plants and animals, but also the elements and the stones, the earth herself are all alive, and that all things are connected through that universal aliveness. And so as a kid, I was telling my parents, oh, the animals are saying this and the tree thinks this, and here's the personalities of these rocks. And, it's very, whether it was my imagination or whether I was tuning in intuitively, maybe some of all of the above. Right. I do believe our imagination is our intuition in disguise. But for me, that was just how I felt about the world. And I really love to read traditional mythology from various cultures all over the world, which is very animistic in its in the stories that are told. So when I stumbled across a shamanic workshop, I was 15 years old. I was in high school. And I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. I'm going to go to this shamanic journey workshop. And I went, I was the only kid there. Everybody else was a proper grown up. And here I was in high school. And I felt like I was home. The sense of relief and familiarity that I felt in this workshop was just this kind of like, oh, I can take a deep breath. Oh, this makes sense to me. Oh, here's the vocabulary for everything that I already think about the world. And here's the, this is a thing. This isn't just me. This is a whole thing that other people also follow and buy into. And so it was a very, relief was a very strong feeling to be, a kid and in high school. High school is hard enough, but to be like a magical type, intuitive type person in high school, is a little bit extra challenging. So I continued my shamanic studies throughout high school, and this was in 2003. Back then in the early 2000s, it was a little harder to find. Now you can just Google shaman near me and there's boatloads of people and workshops. But at the time I was kind of following through referrals and exploring more organically. And then in university, I was in the science department, earning my degree in biology, but also studying shamanism and energy medicine, which was a very interesting
combo, right?
It makes sense to me because I'm very much, I love science and I love spirituality. And for me, they go together. There are people asking questions about what is life? Who are we? Why are we here? And they're two different types of investigation. So for me, it makes sense. I definitely got some flack from all my pre-med classmates who were literally laughing in my face at times about my spiritual inclinations. But, I'm feeling a little vindicated now in light of some of the scientific discoveries coming to light about how consciousness impacts our health. What? Weird. Okay. And so I continued my studies, and I met my shaman mentor in 2009, and she's the person that I've been working with very consistently since then. And the lineage that I'm initiated into comes from what is now Hungary, from the shaman clan Baksha. So I have also studied and practiced with other European teachers in Celtic shamanism, and then also North and South American indigenous teachers as well. So I'm a multi-lineage practitioner, but my primary shamanic lineage comes from Hungary. And I have, it's funny, you mentioned all my titles. My list of certifications is super long, like, very long time. I've been at this for a long time, but the core of what I do is I support people in their transformation and in coming into alignment with their unique gifts, their unique soul path, and living very authentically as the path of what they're here to do and who they're here to be. And I do that primarily through shamanism and alchemy, especially.
Right. And it's so interesting that so many people struggle so much with that. What's my purpose? What's my passion? Oh my God, so much stress. Mm-hmm. I'm like, it's not supposed to be hard. You imagine if we might give it a different name. Imagine if all little kids were given this access to this kind of way of thinking and making it normal. Mm-hmm. What a different place we would end up in.
Yeah.
I like that.
I'm really grateful. My family of origin is very supportive. My parents never shut me down for saying, oh, here's what the animals are thinking, or they would say, oh, what else is the dog saying? Not, oh, Michelle, you're making things up. So that was very, very incredibly, instrumental in me feeling okay to pursue this as a young person. And I know for a lot of people that hasn't been the case, and I see in a lot of the people who come to me, whether they're already on the path or they're a little newer on the path or they're established practitioners, I have people come to me usually having already been through or in the process of going through this really intense awakening experience where they're divesting themselves from this conditioning, from expectations, from the, that choices that they've made consistently over their life to belong, sometimes at the expense of their own authenticity and at the expense of setting aside their unique gifts and their sacred purpose. And then there comes this point where it's so uncomfortable and it's so deeply painful to keep denying that. And spirit keeps speaking louder and louder and louder until we can't possibly ignore it anymore. And then people find me.
Right. I know. Yeah. And I like the way you like multi-lineage. So I've been teaching yoga for 20 years and I say the same thing. I'm like, my main practice is from this lineage, but there's so many of them. And I find all of these practices have so like spiritual, metaphysical yogas, all of them have so much to offer and perspectives that I remember when I first started practicing, I was like, this is the only way. And then I went, wait, no, it's not. Mm-hmm. There's so many ways, many ways as there are people really to connect into whatever that is that you're looking for. Mm-hmm. And for the people who don't know, what is an alchemist?
Well, alchemy, as I mentioned, is the, in addition to shamanism, the main way that I support people. So I began my studies and practice in alchemy in about 2015 or 2016. And it was kind of a similar experience where when I came across the tradition and practice of alchemy, I was like, oh, this is what I'm already doing intuitively and in these other contexts. Right. And so I work with alchemy through, again, as a multi-lineage practitioner, through both the Western Hermetic lens, and there are many traditions that draw upon these traditions, and then also the Eastern Taoist lens of alchemical practice and philosophy as well. And so we look at alchemy as in pop culture, we think of alchemy known as the process of turning lead into gold.
Yeah,
and while that is, and while it's technically not inaccurate, it is a woefully inadequate understanding of what alchemy is. And it's not just turning lead into gold, but it is the art and science of transformation and the process of transmuting any base material, whatever that may be, our own shadow, our own wounding, our traumas, our sacrificing authenticity, our pain, both within this iteration, this earth walk, and past life trauma, inherited trauma, limiting beliefs, all the shadow, all the gunk, and transmuting that through a process, through a very logical, very scientific process of transformation into its most actualized, elevated form that is the gold.
Right.
And alchemy says everything that you need to make gold already exists within the lead. And we know this to be true, that whatever is there to be transformed, the seeds of the truth of who we are already exist within the pile of muck. And what we need to do is to work with these principles of alchemy in order to take it apart, clean it up, make sense of it, reorganize it in a beneficial way, and allow it to shine as the radiance of who we are.
Right. It's like Buddhism taking the layers away to this so you can see the jewel, right? It's like, it's already there.
Yeah.
You just covered it all up. I'm just curious. Do you know who Dr. Teresa Bullard is?
Dr. who?
Teresa Bullard.
I don't know.
So I went down a couple of years ago the rabbit hole of Gaia TV, and she is a PhD physicist who is also an alchemist.
Okay.
And I watched a program about alchemy, and I don't remember what the processes were, but I remember talking about that because she's a physicist, and she studies Hermetic tradition. And she said, there is a process. So when you said that, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a process. And can you tell me again what the stages are of that transformation that take place?
Oh, absolutely.
Is that allowed?
Yes, I can. So let me, it's allowed, but I'm going to give you kind of the surface level version. So Heather, I developed and I teach a 200-hour certification training in alchemy.
Oh my God. Do you know how much I love certifications?
I'm learning now. Awesome. Right. And so I developed this through my years of study and practice and through my my many trainings and my work with alchemy. And I am halfway through my 5th cohort right now, or more than halfway, actually. And also by the time this episode actually releases, we'll be almost done. So I have the next cohort of this alchemy training beginning in March of 2025. And that is something that I probably will still be taking applications for by the time this episode releases, but I've got some students enrolled already, and it's honestly, it's one of the most fun things I do. It's a year-long deep dive apprenticeship into the mysteries and working with alchemy, not only in the stages that I'm about to tell you, but working with movement practices and consciousness practices, working with some astrological pieces, working with ritual practice, personal ceremony. It's very involved and very wonderful. So,
cool.
So there's so much that there's only so much we can talk about in the course of one podcast episode, but I can tell you the stages.
We can whet appetites anyway.
Exactly. Yeah. So let it be said, what I'm here to share with you is like barely touching the tip of your toe to the surface of the very deep well of mystery. But yes, we can do at least that. So the process of alchemy is, and actually let me back up for a moment and say, like, why should anyone care? So all of you listening in, like, why is this important? And you can take notes if you want to, but let me also say, I've got a free guide to what I'm about to tell you that's on my website. You can download. You don't have to remember the words. I'm going to be saying some specific alchemy terms. You don't have to remember them. You don't have to know how to spell them. Just go download the guide. And if I could wave a magic wand and have a wish of what I wish every person in the world could know. I would say right after like attuning to the wisdom of heart and compassion, the second thing I would say would be, I wish everyone would know about the process of alchemy, because again, that point of pain where I see people in like, I cannot bear to be living a life that is not true to who I am any longer. Right. I can't stand the lie that I've built for myself. I cannot stand that I'm in this job I hate that feels like it's sucking the life out of me. I cannot stand that I'm, feeling very unfulfilled or feeling not actualized, or I feel like my presence on earth doesn't matter. That it's very, very painful. And yet a lot of people struggle to even begin the process of initiating transformation in their lives because they don't know how, they don't know where to start.
Right.
And they're afraid. They're afraid of what other people are going to think. They're afraid of losing something that's familiar and safe. They're afraid because they don't know what's on the other side. They're afraid because they have no idea what the process is going to mean or going to ask of them, or who they'll become by the end of it. And so then they continue in this painful existence of not being true to who they are and not living the core essence of their unique gifts and of their soul path and their purpose, and really loving their life. And
Right.
alchemy, I see as the roadmap to demystifying the process of transformation, making it accessible, making it less scary, making it a little more approachable, and saying, look, here's the blueprint of how transformation works, babe. Like it's okay. There are millions and millions of people over the last, thousands of years who have devoted themselves to these mysteries and really benefited so deeply from the mysteries of transformation. And here it is available to you. Do you want it? I've got you. Let's do this together. Like that. I so wish for everybody who is out there right now feeling like they want to crawl out of their skin because they're so uncomfortable in their lives. I want you to have this. If
Right.
it helps you feel a little braver, a little more courageous, a little more like, okay, I can take that first step to making change, to transformation. This is your roadmap. Okay, so that's the why you should even care about the stages of alchemy. This is not some esoteric thing that's not, that doesn't apply to anybody. It does. Right. This is universally applicable. The mysteries that I'm about to share with you is like, you can apply this to anything, any person, any situation. And, and we're in the US right now, we're in some like really uncomfortable upheaval.
Yes, you are.
Storm experience. It's like alchemy applies. Alchemy is the answer. So, okay. Thank you for letting me preface that.
Yeah,
all right.
Go for it.
Yeah. Okay, great. So again, go download that from my website, michellehawk.com. And then I think all the links will be in the show notes too. There's
totally. Yeah.
Awesome.
I might even throw some words in there for them.
Oh, great. Okay, cool. Yeah. So the link it's specific. It'll just take you right to the guide. So that'll be in there as well. Beautiful. And yeah, go download that. You don't have to remember or take notes about everything I'm about to say. So let it wash over you. All right. So the process of, okay, great. Awesome. So the process of alchemy is divided into 3 phases, and it begins with death. So the death phase, and then we've got the purification phase and rebirth. So that tells you the overall arc. And let me remind you people, alchemy is cyclical. Just because you go through it once doesn't mean you're never going to go through it again. And you can also be in multiple stages at once. So if as I'm going through this, you're saying, that sounds really familiar. I feel like I'm in this stage in this area of my life, but I'm in this other stage in this other area of my life. That's totally a thing. Okay. So this is another reason that having this blueprint, having this map of how transformation works can help you orient to where do I need to be allocating my energy and attention differently in these different areas of my life in order to support my most effective transformation. Okay. So we move through death, purification, and rebirth. Now, those 3 phases are further subdivided into 7 stages. And the first stage of alchemy is called calcination. This is in the death phase, and the calcination is the death and loss of physical structures. This might look like losing your job or quitting your job, losing a loved one, ending a relationship, moving to a new place. Cleaning out your closet is also a calcination activity because you're getting rid of stuff. And let's also remember, we can either proactively choose to enter into that death stage, or we can have change choose us. And one of the things I like to tell, compute? There we go, camera. One of the things I like to tell my students is choose change before change chooses you. So if you are sitting around waiting, you're like, oh gosh, I know I'm in this job I hate and I really don't want to leave. Like, go ahead and start making that shift before spirit comes to slap you in the face
I highly recommend that.
Your job. Right. Yep. Right. From personal experience. Yes. Right. We get to be proactive. So again, this process of releasing physical structures is the first part of alchemy. And the second stage of alchemy is called dissolution. Now, this is the loss and death of energetic and emotional structures. There's a lot of grief work happens here, a lot of unwinding beliefs, unwinding conditioning, inherited blueprints, expectations from ourselves or from other people. A lot of the etheric structures of our identity, who we used to be, and letting that go fully. Who were you at that job you kind of hated? Maybe there were some parts of you that you really liked, or maybe you're like, wow, I was at this job that I really hated, and then I took that stress home to my partner, and I don't want to be that person. So I'm going to unwind that part of my identity that's so deeply invested in my job so that I can actually have more freedom to be a better partner, for example. So making sense so far?
Totally. And I feel like those first two are pretty big stages.
Yes, very big, and generally kind of uncomfortable. And this is why I think this is part of the reason why people are really trepidatious about entering into the process of alchemy in the first place, or entering into transformation, because they're afraid of loss. Now, when I ask people, so I'm going to zoom out just for a moment. We're going to take a little side note. When I ask people, how do you think transformation works? Most people start with, oh, I'm going to imagine where I want to go, or do some visualizations, or make a vision board. There is a place for that, but it's not where we start. So think about where I just said we start with death.
Yeah.
We start with letting go. So the part where we start to bring in new energy, or to imagine where we're going from here, is actually stage 3. So we're going to arrive there right now. So we're shifting into the purification phase, and stage 3 of alchemy is called separation. This is where we do some sorting. This is where we go into analysis, and we say, okay, I just quit my job that I hate, and I'm moving into a new house, and pulling apart these different pieces. What did I actually really like about the house that I was in, even though it wasn't the right fit? Okay, well, I really love that reading nook. I want to make sure wherever I'm living has a reading nook. And even though I really hated that job, I really loved this one part of my work that I got to do. So I'd like to make sure that that is in my future job. And okay, so now here's what I want to bring in. So it's a very sorting and analysis. This is where you get to make your pros and cons lists and your vision boards, and evaluate, and kind of have that higher perspective where you're looking down and
this is where the thinking brain gets to play.
Exactly. And again, most people want to start here. We don't get to start here. This is, again, stage 3. So the sorting does have a place, in the imagining and the visualization, but it's not at the beginning. So from there, and I will say also, people can get stuck here. So, and this is something that I've had to learn my way out of okay, after you do all the thinking and the sorting and the planning and the list, you got to actually put it into an action.
Right.
And this is where a lot of people can get stuck, where it's like, oh, it's just fun to be in the imaginal realms. And then, oh, wait, I have to actually live that into being. Okay. And this is, sound familiar? Anybody?
Yeah.
Everyone out there is raising their hands like, yeah, that's me. Okay. Yeah. All the planners out there. Okay. So now we get to put it into a body. And this is stage 4 of alchemy. It's called conjunction. And this is the putting those pieces back together. It's the reformation, the reconstitution. So you pulled all the stuff apart, and you said, and let's take this through. I'm going to give us a real life example. So in stage 1, in calcination, you quit your job, or you lost your job. And then in stage 2, you were grieving, oh, I'm really what does that mean about me? I'm going to let go of that identity. Stage 3, you started being strategic, and you're saying, okay, well, here's the couple pieces that I really loved, even though the job overall wasn't right for me. What can I bring in moving forward? Stage 4, you're starting to take action steps. You're redoing your resume. You're applying to jobs. You're doing interviews. So you're starting to go out in the world and put it back into a body. So you're creating a new form for this. Is that making sense?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, awesome. And you might even start a temp job, or say like you begin a job on a trial basis. All right, and now we enter into the rebirth phase. And stage 5 of alchemy is called, yay, hooray. This is one thing, again, that I wish I could remind people of, is like the beginning stages of alchemy. And Heather, like you said, the beginning, it's uncomfortable. It is definitely not for the faint of heart to be working with some of these energies. And my apprentices, I tell my students who come into this year-long course, is like, the beginning is going to be kind of challenging. And I have had a couple of students who are like, oh yeah, I'm really good at cleansing. And like for them, it's kind of no big deal, because they've already done a lot of work with clearing and purging, and they're very comfortable working with death and loss. But by and large, people are a little uncomfortable.
And so I think anything worth it is, if you want something better, you got to go through the messy bits, right?
Well, and then once you do it once, it gets easier in the future. Like once we have been through this process, and this is something I do have my students look back and say, is like, wow, okay, having gone through alchemy, I'm so much more courageous about ending other things in my life that I know aren't working, because I'm not afraid of that process anymore. And because I can trust the stages of alchemy to know what's on the other side. Right. And I think that's very liberating. It's really, really important. Yeah. So we again are in stage 5 of alchemy. We're entering into the rebirth phase, trumpets. And stage 5 is called fermentation. Now this, for anybody who works in fermentation or makes kombucha or brews beer, we know there's this phase where like it looks like nothing's happening for a minute, and that's kind of what happens here. But it's also the reanimation. It's the spiritization. So there's this phase of you need to not poke it. You don't shake it. Like if you're making kombucha, you don't shake the jar. You got to let it just sit there and do its thing. And then eventually you start to see these bubbles forming. And this is what in alchemy, it was a sign for the ancient alchemists of the bubbles forming, was like, oh, here's the new life coming in. Here's the spirit coming in. So this is that moment. And everybody, as I describe this, I guarantee everybody's going to be like, oh yeah, I know what that feels like. So imagine in a relationship, say like, okay, so you broke up with your partner, you grieved the relationship, you started imagining what you want in the new life partner, you start going on dates, right? That was stage 4. You're going on dates and you start dating somebody. And there's that moment where you go from just dating somebody to you're in a relationship. There's that new force that comes in. And it's love. It's your connection. It's the force of your relationship that is its own entity. So it's receiving this animating aliveness. And same with a job. Like you might be like, oh, I'm just started working at a job. And then there's that day where you walk in, you're like greeting everybody by name. And you're like, I know what I'm doing. That's that new life that is present.
I'm here. Hooray.
I'm here. I've arrived.
It's like you land, right? You finally land. It's almost like you finally land in that space, and you don't feel like you're separate from it or something.
Yeah. Well, it comes to life. Right. And that's the spiritization, is like, okay, this form, this body, this new identity of you is plugged into spirit, or like spirit comes to give it new life. Right. Okay. And then stage 6 of alchemy is called distillation. And this is to look at, and chemical distillation is like the repeated evaporation and condensation of a substance to come to a very, very concentrated, very pure essence of a substance. So like if you're making alcohol, for example, you end up, the more you distill it, the stronger proof it becomes. And so in distillation, energetically, what we're doing is we're repeatedly cycling through our energy to come into what is the core essence of who we are. What is the concentrated, radiant frequency of this version of who I am, of my aliveness? And this is like, again, in those practical examples we were looking at, you're in a relationship and you go through some trials as a couple, and you meet the family and you meet the friends and you get in a big fight, and then you're like, oh, now we're like really honed into our identity as a couple. This is the essence of who I am in relationship and who we are. Or you go through your first big presentation at your job and you like have to fire your first employee, and then it's like, okay, no, here's my essence, right? And then the end stage of alchemy, which, as we know, it's not actually the end because it's a continuous cycle, but we can say like, okay, the quote end is called coagulation. And this is the completion, celebration, the radiance. And again, to go back to our kind of pop culture understanding of alchemy, the end product being gold, and also the philosopher's stone. So the philosopher's stone is said to be able to turn any metal into gold and to be able to create the elixir of life. And I look at that as, okay, as the most actualized radiant version of ourselves, we can turn any metal into gold, meaning in our own radiance, we can inspire others to also step into their radiance and healing. By being a beneficial presence in the world, by living as the most radiant, loving, compassionate, actualized versions of ourselves, we can inspire and emanate that in the world around us. And that's where we are turning others into gold, into their own gold. And then the creating the elixir of life is, in creating immortality. It's like when we are tuned in with this cycle, that is the nature of immortality, to be able to consistently go through this death and rebirth process for ourselves, and to trust and surrender and essentially become the phoenix in our own lives.
Right. It's like you keep your own spiral improving and improving and improving. Yeah. And that just makes you stronger at that, being that touchstone for people, Funny you said philosopher's stone, and I thought Harry Potter for a minute there, but
people often do. Yeah, that is an example of alchemy in pop culture, right?
Yes,
the philosopher's stone. But looking at, I also want to say something that I have found people kind of get a little bit stuck on. This does not mean that you're going to live a life paved with roses and buttercups and everything's going to be easy for you.
Unicorn farts.
Right. No, exactly. But what it does mean is that when things get challenging and when you need to make difficult choices, you're going to have this toolkit that is going to make it easier for you. You're going to have, okay, here's a map so I don't feel so lost. Here's a very organized, very logical system of transformation that I can trust for when life hits the fan, because it always does, right? Like people we love get in accidents, people go through health crises, the economy falls apart. Like there's all sorts of things in the world that might create discomfort, or that we need to respond and be active with, we need to work with. And alchemy, it doesn't mean that you stay the same forever. Alchemy is inherently about transformation and about change. And I talked earlier about you living as the most authentic version of you, as the most true version of you. That version of you is going to change throughout your life. Who was true for you, who was true for me as a 15-year-old, now I'm in my late 30s, like that version of me has changed, but I'm still living as that core authentic version of me. And then 30 years from now, again, that'll be a different version, but I have the tools in my toolkit to stay flexible, to stay adaptable, and to let go of the old versions of me when they're ready to die, so that I can phoenix myself as this new iteration of my true essence that is wanting to express in my life. And I think that's something that I really want people to clue into and to not be afraid of. Is it's okay to change. And in fact, it's fundamentally necessary for us to change consistently throughout our lives.
And I find it so fascinating that people resist change because they want things to stay exactly as they are. But whether you follow a process or not, if you looked at yourself 10 years ago, you're not the same person. And whether you had tools to help you navigate the stuff that happened over 10 years or not, you shifted and changed and adapted and did what you had to do to keep going 10 years later. But I feel like sometimes it's like that resistance to change is like an ostrich with its head in the sand, completely denying that nothing ever stays the same, and being able to figure out how to do it with grace and ease will just make your life so much better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Stop
Yeah.
fighting with it. Just figure out how to surf it.
Right.
You know what I mean? Oh my goodness.
And
yes.
And how to align with it, really.
Right?
You know, that whole denial piece that you just talked about is, you know, I invite people whenever people are a little nervous or unsure around, okay, how do I work with this? I tell people, just look outside. You know, right now we're recording this actually right at the winter solstice. So I know it's going to come out a little bit later, but winter solstice, we're in the middle of winter. It is kind of dark. It's like, you know, the trees are all bare. But we know we have a whole life's worth of personal experience knowing that after the winter solstice, the day is going to start getting longer, the trees are going to burst into bloom, and spring will come again. And the same is true in your life, that you have this evidence that life is cyclical. You have this evidence that change is not only like happens whether we like it or not, but it's also can be a very powerful and very beautiful and very like juicy thing to engage with. So demystifying transformation and giving yourself permission to flex and to flow, so that that true version of you who is aligned with their soul purpose, that is expressing their unique gifts and their passion and their creativity and their fun and their love and their like spiritual power and their magnificence, gets to live through you, gets to have a seat at the table, and gets to express themselves fully.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is getting dark here. I just looked at my clock, and I think we're 12 and a half hours away from the official solstice, which is fascinating that you are the person I'm talking to right at the solstice. I think that is perfect, right? Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, so good. And you mentioned it, but michellehawk.com is where they can find you, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep, michellehawk.com. You can, as I mentioned, I've got this intensive alchemy certification training. It is a 200-hour training. Don't let that scare you, but it's all good stuff. I know there's some people who are like totally all about it, who are like, yes, I want a 500-hour training. There is continuing education after that, but let's just start there. And then if you're hearing this and you're like, I don't know if alchemy is right for me, you can certainly reach out to me as well. And I do offer healing work, mentorship, training in shamanic practice, energy healing practice, mediumship, mastery, and sacred ecology. So I've got a lot of tools in my tool belt.
You've got a lot going on over there, my friend.
I do. It's, you know,
I love it. I love all of them. I think it's all amazing.
It's, you know, I can't do just one thing. Maybe it's because I'm a Gemini, but I'm like, I need to like learn all the stuff and then have all the tools in my toolkit. But I love it. And I'm a perpetual student and steward of the mysteries. And for those of you who are wanting some help in your corner, who are perhaps feeling stuck in transformation, or you are currently going through a spiritual awakening, or you've been through an awakening and you've taken all the classes and you're looking around saying, now what? How does this fit with my authentic gifts and my soul purpose and my unique path? Then come talk to me, because that's really what I specialize in.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
That's so good. Friends, you got a lot to chew on for this episode. So don't panic. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Go back and listen to it as many times as you want.
And go download the guide. So I know I threw out, it's like a lot of steps to think about and a lot of specific alchemy terms, but that's okay. I wrote it all down for you. So just go download the guide. You can do some journaling. There's like, also I go into more detail in the guide. So I tell you where people usually get stuck, and then I give you practices to do for each stage.
Beautiful. That's even better.
Yeah.
Definitely worth it. Definitely. Yeah. And before we head off to our energetic worlds, the guest gets the final word of wisdom. Do you have a final thought to share with friends out here in podcast land?
Yeah, I did say this once already, but I'm going to say it again because I think it's really important. Choose change before change chooses you.
Definitely a mic drop right there. Yeah. Ping. Okay, you heard it. You heard it, friends. And you know from my story that sometimes if you're not paying attention, change is going to choose you and kick you in the ass. Mm-hmm. So
I think we've all been there.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Michelle. Oh my goodness. So much. I feel like we could probably just go like hours and 200 hours, but that's a long podcast.
Probably. That's more than one episode. Heather, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed our conversation today, and I hope this is beneficial to all of you listening out there. Again, if you've got questions or this resonates with you, reach out to me. But Heather, thank you so much. Thank you for the container that you hold and for hosting this conversation and inviting me to speak with you today.
Thank you. Definitely. Podcast friends, send this out to someone who you think is a little on the weird side, because they're going to love it. Take care, and I will see you next time. Hello, my friend. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you found it useful and you're like me and you want to help others, please share this, comment, like, subscribe, all of those things that will help this podcast to be found by more people. And if you found it useful, there's a chance that someone else will find it useful as well. If you ever have any questions, I am here to answer your questions. I would love to help you. My direct email address is info@heatherstewart.coach. You can also find me at heatherstewart.coach. And if you go over to my website, you will find copies of the podcast. You'll find the link to my Instagram and my Facebook. And I do have a personal request because I do want to help as many people as I can with these podcasts. So if you could give me a review, and my friend, I would love if you gave me a good one. If you could share this, if you could send it out into the world, I would truly appreciate it. I hope that you have an amazing day. I hope that you are finding your way back to wellness by getting back to me. Take care, my friend. Be well, and we will see you again next time.